Durban 400, a coalition of grassroots activists from the African diaspora, was formed to take the issue of reparations for the transatlantic slave trade to Durban, South Africa for the UN World Conference Against Racism, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerances. They demand for a final declaration that addresses the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism as crimes against humanity and that reparations are due African descendants was viewed by the United States government and their allies as inflammatory.
Be clear that our goal as Africans is to go to Durban to fight for the issue of the transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity, colonialism, a crime against humanity.
The Western press is reporting that the World Conference Against Racism won't be successful if the United States and its European allies do not participate. We take the opposite position. We say that we have forced the Western world up against the wall on the question of the transatlantic slave trade being a crime against humanity, the economic roots of racism being examined, and that reparations are owed African people throughout the world.
We're not talking about individuals when we talk about reparations. We're not talking about whether or not you're guilty or you're not guilty as an individual and you have some guilt complex. We're talking about the culpability of governments and states.
So now they will have to come to Durban and put the issue on the table for the world to see.
Durban 400 is a Pan-African coalition of brothers and sisters from the diaspora who came to Durban to make a statement, and a very simple one, that there was a crime committed against African people, that crime was rooted in economics, and that crime must be compensated. The Durban 400 represent the expression of our people all around the world that we must bring to closure the question of what happened to us. We must bring the truth to fore, that it was a crime, that is not so much we're looking for an apology, we're looking for a rectification of the crime. And so there we came here to press our case to the world that African people are not going to be denied the reality of our history and the compensation for the crime committed against us.
I had no idea how important it is for people who are not involved in the government to come and state their case, and how much of an impact that can have on the government. And that a few people can make a huge difference when it comes to international policies.
Delegates from 168 countries came to vote on various resolutions, some which ultimately would be included in the final UN declaration. These countries were assigned to regional groups: Western European and other, WEO, Asian and Pacific Island Group, Central European Group, African Group, and GRUEC, the group of Latin American and Caribbean countries. However, non-governmental organizations could not vote, but they were encouraged to hold a forum before and during the conference, and activists from around the world came to discuss their issues and develop an NGO position paper which would be presented to the World Conference. Long lines complicated the registration process, and conference passes were not always available, but the Durban 400 came too far to be discouraged, so they devised a plan to get around the confusion.
We'll break down into groups in a second, and then talk about how we deal with the passes and how we rotate people in and out. We have enough passes so that everybody should be able to get in there today. An hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, it depends upon when we get a final count of the passes. But everybody should be able to get in there today so that everybody can get a taste of what's going on in there. It's nothing magic, it's no different than what we do over here, except there's a higher concentration of delegates.
There was no such thing as a crime.
Prior to meeting with delegates from countries opposed to reparations, the Durban 400 held strategy workshops to clarify key points of contention.
I don't know if I know the answer. Will you answer it, Hilda? What is it? And there was no crime called crime against humanity and slavery occurred. What's the answer?
You think your retort to that would be, oh, absolutely, I know that is what happened, and that's how that terminology came about. But just because there was no terminology available does not mean it did not occur.
What's the precedent for reparations? One is the Japanese received reparations.
After internment in World War II.
The who?
After internment, after being in a concentration camp in World War II.
The precedent that they all know about is the precedent of the people who were in concentration camps in Europe. And who worked as what they call slave labor in Europe. And that slave labor period lasted much shorter than the slave labor period of our ancestors in the United States.
Yes.
And now she jacks down.
Okay, well, you know, the Jews, when they experienced the Holocaust, they got money from Germany. They got money from the countries in which enslaved them. The United States did not pay the Jews. Why do you want us to pay? We did not enslave you. All we did was allow for this to happen. Why do you want us to pay now? That was hundreds of years ago.
Because you have benefited.
I didn't benefit.
You are continuing to benefit.
Inherited wealth. Lloyds of London benefited. Get your money from England.
And the economy of the United States was built on the slave.
People who do not go to the ICC need to be lobbying on the outside of the ICC, okay? So the whole purpose of the pass is to get into the ICC. At 11:30, come back here, you'll get a pass and you'll go into the ICC. And at 1 o'clock, we'll come back here and summarize. Is that fair?
The largest governmental body of delegates at the conference was the Africa Group. They represented 48 countries, and as the conference got underway, the Durban 400 continued to develop their alliance with that group.
Initiative that you have taken in asking to come and meet with the African group should have come from us, and we should have. And in that sense, I want to really extend to all of you a very warm thank and appreciation for actually reaching out to us, and this actually is also a beginning of a continuous road that we will work together hand in hand.
We just wanted to reemphasize it, that when we go back, we will be meeting with the Congressional Black Caucus. They've already invited us. They have a meeting every September, Black Caucus weekend, where they discuss issues. They're going to do a summation of the World Conference. They've invited us to deal with that. We're going to talk about the firm stance that Africa has taken and whatever comes out of the final document. But we're also going to discuss with them the Zimbabwe Democracy Act, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, because it's an act that does not simply affect Zimbabwe, but also affects all Southern Africa, SADC in particular, but Africa in general. Because it's an act that says that the United States can determine where democracy exists, apply sanctions until they decide that democracy has been reestablished, and will provide money to the opposition and prevent support from international monetary organizations to countries that they've decided are on their hit list.
Thank you very much for the support and the activities and the work you've done on behalf of my government in our quest to get land given land to the people.
People should pay particular attention to Minister Shinamasa's speech. He's the Minister of Justice from Zimbabwe. We believe it's a powerful speech on one word. This attack on Zimbabwe, we believe, is a red herring.
The struggle against landlessness in Zimbabwe and in South Africa is part and parcel of the issue of reparations and colonialism. The Durban 400, the largest NGO at the conference, made this a central issue and held demonstrations and press conferences to make their position clear. However, there were those at the conference who wanted to shift the focus away from reparations.
Despite the tactics to split off African people against African people in their classic maneuvering of the process, the African people, the African group, are holding strong on our position.
What about the Caribbean?
We have support of some of the Caribbean countries. We have support of Cuba, Vietnam, North Korea, and many other countries.
I have a question for you. If the Jewish people supported the civil rights movement in the United States stronger than any other community, why attack the Jewish community today?
I think that the question that you raised shows misinformation. Because you support one thing does not mean you're opposed to another. We say that what happened to the Jewish people was a crime against humanity. And the Jewish people have been vindicated. But you can never have total vindication if 6 million of your people are put in ovens by the Germans. We take the same position. We should never forget. As a matter of fact, we have learned much from the Jewish people in terms of strategy to prepare and to seek damages for what had happened to them. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So it is not because we support the people in Palestine to get their land back that we are opposed to Jewish people. That is not correct.
Don't you consider the Jewish Don't you consider the Jewish community in the United States to be great supporters of the civil rights movement? Has nothing to do with this.
No, I'm on point. I like that. I'm definitely on point. So don't try to interrupt him. I want him to follow his line of thinking. Your line of thinking is that the Jewish people supported black people in the civil rights movement and there was some parallel. This is a fact, this is true. But because we support the struggles of the Palestinian people, does not make us anti-Semitic. It does not make us opposed to Jewish people, and there's no parallel. So now I'll take other questions. Go ahead.
Whites invaded Zimbabwe. We know that Ian Smith subsequently declared himself independent even from Great Britain.
But why does that mean that an individual farmer who may have bought the land from another individual farmer doesn't have the right to farm that land?
Because in any jurisprudence that you cannot buy anything that was illegally seized. In the U.S., if you do, you are aiding and abetting a crime.
Would you say that, so what role do you see then for whites in Zimbabwe?
The role I see for whites in Zimbabwe is to participate in the development of the country, is to continue, because there are whites in Zimbabwe who are in fact helping to develop the land. They cannot own 80% of the most arable land, and they represent maybe 5 to 10% of the population.
Or would you say that they could own 50% of the land?
I, as a person from the United States, could not say how much they should own. That is within the province of the land reform program of the Zimbabwean government.
By land reform, do you mean land seizure?
It's very interesting that BBC has never called the invasion of Zimbabwe, the seizure, the real seizure of land in Zimbabwe, seizure. It is only in 1998 and 99 when the Zimbabwean government says that we have to take back the land that was taken from us, that it becomes seizure.
What about the situation of the many thousands of black Zimbabwean farm workers who are now being thrown out of their jobs because of the seizure of the land?
Well, first of all, we have to establish fact from British media, so that I don't have the figures at my disposal. But as the British reporters have said in the New Africa magazine, that they print exactly what their editors demand, because if not, they would not have a job and would not be able to put their children through college.
So you're saying that no African workers who are on the farms now have been thrown out of their land, thrown out of their jobs by the war veterans, the so-called war veterans?
We go from thousands of black workers being thrown off their land to my saying no workers are being thrown off their land. As I said when you asked the first trick question, that I here in South Africa do not have the facts at my disposal, but the Zimbabwean government does. But what I do deny, without fear of contradiction, that the BBC's reporting is so biased and so racist that in the New Africa magazine, the August edition, they admitted so.
So what would you like to see as a settlement of the whole land question? How do you see it being resolved?
I would like to see the British government and the United States government live up to their commitment they made at Lancaster. And that is that they would reimburse the farmers for the land, and that the Zimbabwean government would have to pay for whatever improvements that those farmers had made to the land. That's what I want to see.
Canada's position basically is they do not support reparations being on the table. And as far as declaring the transatlantic slave trade as a crime against humanity, what they're also saying is that because of the time of slavery, the crime against humanity legal statute was not in place. Hence, it's not retroactive to the transatlantic slave trade.
The fact is that the African personality, African communism, African through Nkrumah, a whole host of peoples created those human rights standards. And now we're being told the laws don't exist. It doesn't matter if the laws don't exist, because actually we're looking at the biggest temporal rip in the space-time continuum of the development of African peoples. Nobody can replace it. And to that extent, regardless of what the formal governments may say, this argument is already won. All we're talking about is making the time and getting the strategy together to deliver the outcome, which is an apology, designating a crime against human rights with substantive reparations for the contemporary impacts of slavery. I'm the son, a great-great-grandson of a slave. I can't even tell you my family's history, much past the plantation in Jamaica. Now somebody somewhere is responsible for that, and I say, designate a crime against humanity. Black people of the world, unite.
We go to say, the reality is that this is things that you owe. And you owe them first and foremost because you're criminals.
Absent reparations, the perpetrators of the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, and other crimes against humanity will continue to be unjustly enriched by these crimes. The economic, social, and political development of these perpetrators is in large part due to the pillage, exploitation, brutalization, and murder of peoples in Africa, African descendants in the United States, in the diaspora, as well as other victims throughout the world. Absent reparations, the unjust enrichment will continue, fortified by structural and institutional racism, while victims will continue to be unjustly denied the benefits of their contributions to the world. We urge you to strike a blow to end racism by supporting reparations. We urge you to encourage your governmental delegates to the World Conference to set a deadline on the informal discussions being chaired by Brazil on this issue, and to allow the issue of reparations be sent to the drafting committees for inclusion in the declaration and program of action. I thank you.
The World Conference provided a unique opportunity for progressive activists to come together to have their voices heard in protest against injustices that occur in many places around the world.
March that we were planning to participate in at 5 o'clock to support the masses in South Africa against privatization, urbanization, landlessness, homelessness, poverty, etc. is going on right now. There's thousands of people in the street.
Today we are still faced with a situation in South Africa where 13% of the entire population of about 40 million, 13% of 40 million controls 87% of the land. And 13%, 87% of the population is crammed into 13% of the entire land. So this is the position we are having in Zimbabwe and in South Africa currently. And we haven't moved much from that position. We have political power and freedom, but we don't have economical power in this country. So this is our position, and we are using every opportunity to demonstrate and to protest that we need full and all freedom in this country.
We're at the NGO Convention Center. How far are they away from us? He said they're going to get me through this area for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't want to just...
No, I think...
What do we want? Reparation. Was it a crime? Never give up. Never give up. Never give up. Never give up.
Durban, South Africa, joined the masses of people in the tradition of the movement in the United States supporting the overthrow of this management of apartheid in South Africa. We are the free South African people in the streets in America. We're joining the masses of people
This protest march, organized by COSATU, the Coalition of South African Trade Unions, invited the Durban 400 to participate in a show of solidarity in the largest mass demonstration in South Africa since the release of Nelson Mandela. And on this warm August day, tens of thousands of people marched in the streets of Durban, South Africa, against racism, privatization, globalization, landlessness, and homelessness. These issues were reflected in the signs, in the chants, and in the toy-toy, a jubilant form of protest stands that characterized the South African anti-apartheid struggle.
The wealth of whites in Africa has been built on stolen land. And so we believe that the resolution of these questions in Africa are tied to one. Land is the basis of everything. It's where people live, it's where crops grow, it's where minerals exist.
Many issues were presented at this conference, and the NGO Forum, not able to vote on resolutions, was promised their discussions would have some influence over the final outcome. However, the goal of the Durban 400 was to stay focused on the issue of reparations, and their key strategy was to concentrate on the UN Forum, where government representatives were in attendance and where their lobbying efforts would have maximum impact.
The African and African Descendants Caucus, of which the December 12th movement, particularly under the leadership of Attorney Wareham, was very much part of unifying the African community around the position initiated by the December 12th movement. And that caucus has continued its work. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we can't, all of us can't go to those meetings, which are important. We are represented in the African and African Descendants Caucus by Dr. Crawford and a few others. Our work is over here. So let's not get confused and feel guilty. We are very much a part and continue to support that caucus, but our work is over here. And we have representatives over there.
On September 3rd, 2001, at Africa University, the United States delegation scheduled a briefing. They were going to give an update of the conference to the U.S. NGOs, but instead they announced their withdrawal from the conference. However, the Durban 400 had plans to conduct their own briefing and staged a demonstration to protest the United States government's refusal to address the issue of reparations. This action shocked some and inspired others.
Set the basis for a tribunal. The tribunal will have the perpetrators and the victims. And out of that tribunal will come rectification, which is compensation. Because this was all about economic exploitation and underdevelopment. We're not stupid. The slaves read, the slaves analyze, and the slaves fight for their freedom. So this conference belongs to African people on whose backs this was built. This is not about xenophobia, because the basis of xenophobia is in fact the question of meager means divided among the poor, while rich people sit back and divide the world. Racism is the issue, and it's economic, but it was based on the most gross crime against humanity in the history. We don't need any other precedents. There is no precedent for 50 million bones on the Atlantic Ocean. There is no precedent for millions of people who are in fact nationless, supposedly without a culture. We are the precedent for this issue. That's right. And we're not going to back down. That's right. We're not going to be diverted by people who inject issues that are not the real issues. The West must pay for their crime. Belgium, the United States, the continuation of those crimes equal right up to today. Corporations, financial institutions whose backs were built on ours, still have us enslaved. Slavery continues as a basis of our underdevelopment. It is not because white people are superior. It is because we have been underdeveloped by a criminal act. And we're going to resolve that issue here. Then we're going forward because reparations has gripped the entire world. Inequality cannot be based on ideological feelings. It is based on economic deprivation. That's right. And we're going to move on that, brothers and sisters. And we believe that those are the issues of the World Conference Against Racism. If we lose that focus, then we will talk many things and accomplish nothing. Let us not lose, as my brother from Chicago says, let's not lose our focus. It was a crime. Was it a crime? Yes. Was it a crime? Yes. Against who? Humanity. So what do you want? Reparation. That ain't deep, it's real simple. Was it a crime? Yes. Against who? Humanity. So what do you want? Reparation. So what do you want? Reparation. And when do you want it? Now. So when do you want it? Now. Straight ahead. Straight ahead.
About 5:30, we met with the State Department representatives, Howard Burlow, Steve Wagensall, and on behalf of Mike Southwick, they told us that they were withdrawing from this World Conference. They told us point blank that they will not do anything to participate in any of the drafting of documents at this point. So I think it's pointless for you all to meet with them because I don't know how if their position will change within that time.
All those in favor of not meeting with the U.S. government, say so. Aye. All those who prefer to meet with the U.S. government, raise your hand.
So we need to strategize on how we are going to communicate a clear message to the people at home, not only about the conference, but also how we're going to go home and strategize, educate about reparations and our long-term strategies post-Durban that we need to focus on. We need to be together and come together on a strategy to do that while we're all gathered here together.
My name is Dorothy Lewis. I'm the national co-chair in COBRA. I think we should congratulate the U.S. government for doing the only principled thing that it has ever done. And it is a conflict of interest for the criminal to sit at the table. No criminal sits at the table to decide whether or not they should be held accountable for 400 years of wrongdoing, genocide, and continuing to So, and we should call upon the international community and African governments to not sell us out again to the highest
I would suggest that we put together our own delegation and have that delegation take the seats that the U.S. government is abandoning.
I'm just concerned that if the U.S. White House is going to announce tonight in 1 hour that we should have some presence on the streets tonight, as well as tomorrow morning.
When I left, the U.S. delegation was at the top of the stairs coming in. When I got over here, the people who did South African television this morning said there's something breaking right now. It sounds like the U.S. delegation is pulling out. We went in to do the interview, then word had come. We had already seen a press statement from the South African government on their response to this, because the understanding was that they were going to pull out. And in fact, there might be 40 other countries that might pull out with them. We went down and we took over and created the real U.S. briefing. We didn't need the U.S. government for a briefing to tell us what they were not going to get down with anyway. No illusions, as Emil Cabral said, tell no lies, claim no easy victories. The United States was never going to get down with this. They came in, never situated themselves, low-key, dramatic exit. All staged. During the course of stuff, they never took over any working group because they didn't want the embarrassment of dropping their work when they split. So when they got here, the plan was already in motion to split. Maybe the Durban 400 helped get their asses out of town. So tomorrow, we have more work to do. And that work has to be, now that the shoe has fell, an assessment of what's happened. Tonight, you know, the enemy is already into plan 2. Because this was all orchestrated. They now are probably trying to put pressure, particularly on people to drop out too. To say that this conference is not legitimate. They've done it before. Our role is to deepen our solidarity without the enemy in our camp.
A white lady came out and said, "You were magnificent, sir. What is your name?" She was from New York, a white lady. She said, "You have convinced me that what African Americans are demanding is black." This white woman, and she was with her brother, and he was kind of scared. You know, we're gaining support in Britain. We've been all over Europe talking on the BBC, 3 or 4 different stations. And so we're winning support because we're on the ground, we're collective, we're studying, we understand the trend, but we can't lose sight of the real world.
Today is a resounding victory for African people because the African group decided and were able to work out differences amongst themselves such that they will include reparations in the document. This is a major victory for African people, not only in terms of this conference, but in terms of future of our people, where we have finally forged the type of unified struggle against imperialism and against the European countries that have benefited from the exploitation and rape of our people and our country and our land.
Did people hear the Africa Group's final statement?
No.
The World Conference recognizes that slavery, the slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, apartheid, and genocide constitute crimes against humanity.
Black power.
And our major historical sources and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance.
Yeah, that's right.
And that Africans and peoples of African descent and peoples of Asian descent and indigenous peoples have been and continue to be victims of these acts and their consequences.
Wait a minute, can I run it off for the people?
Once the United States delegation left the conference, Belgium was asked to fill in and continue their work. The Durban 400 found this disturbing because during the 19th century, under King Leopold II, the Belgians' lust for the natural resources of the Congo, which is reported to have the most natural wealth of any country on the planet, resulted in the vile practice of mutilating the Congolese. And during the 1960s, the governments of Belgium and the United States conspired in the murder of Congo's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, and the overthrow of his democratically elected government.
The other thing we have to have for tomorrow, Congress, is the indictment against Belgium for the killing of Patrice Lumumba.
Right.
Everybody's coming up to us saying, are you all going to stop Belgium? Because Belgium has stepped into the U.S.'s shoes and running the most oppressive, racist stuff they can run. So the only way in which we stop Belgium is we indict them for Patrice Lumumba's murder.
Belgium is one of the most dangerous countries in the history of Africa as far as how that small country has played a role in the devastation of Africa. You have to remember that Belgium has been the seat of NATO for many years, and that it has also now become the home of the European Union. Belgium sees itself as the heart of Africa, as it's proclaimed in its national airport. And yet, when we talk about the Congo, its role in the Congo has been one of nothing but pillage and plunder, murder, and mayhem.
In Congo, the Belgians who colonized us were asking the native people there to collect a certain amount of rubber each day. If they were not able to collect that amount of rubber, then the Belgians will cut off their arms. With the money that was made from the rubber, they built an arch in Brussels called the Royal Palace. We are saying that this money should have come back to Africa, and we call that arch the Arch of Cut Arms. They cut the arms of Congolese, and this money was used to build Belgium. So Belgium now must recognize that this is a crime against humanity. I'm talking about Belgians because they are the ones who colonized Congo.
This has been a paper fight, a language fight, a 6-year fight that was initiated by attorney Roger Wareham of the December 12th movement to get one very important sentence into the final UN declaration. This battle has been won, and the United Nations Declaration now serves as a catalyst in the continuing struggle for restitution for some of the greatest crimes against humanity in world history.
France has taken a position that they agree with their parliament that the transatlantic slave trade is a crime against humanity. But to this point, the European Union is presenting a solid front. One person speaks for them, they're not breaking rank in terms of positions they're taking around the document. The South Africans proposed a compromise document that has something from the document that the Europeans put out, something from the document the Africans put out, and it's a basis for discussion. But what we want to emphasize when we're talking with our contacts is that people need to adhere to the document that was originally put out by the African group days ago. When we deal with our regional groupings, it's the same thing. When you talk with your other countries, you want to emphasize that they should protest any of this stretching out, blocking, parliamentary Robert's rules blocking that's going on in that group that's dealing with the past, transatlantic slave trade, reparations, all those kind of things. So our work continues. We're not at any point where we can rest on our laurels. We can see the positive effects of what we've already done. We gotta see it through to the end. This is going to go down to the last minute.
You should know that our issues has been negotiated right now, and we are concerned that the language of reparation and crime against humanity, the European Union, they're pushing to eliminate it, to change the concept. This is information we have received this evening. So we want them to know that we are here. We want them to know that we will not compromise on these two issues. And we want them to know that we're going to stand in solidarity of all the victims that are here. And together, we're going to demand they respect our will. So that's what the march is about. It's about unity at the beginning of the anti-global racial movement.
We don't have enough time, that's why I want to give the floor directly, immediately to Mrs. Fadela Piano, who is the chairperson for December 12th movement.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is indeed an honor for us to meet and discuss with you some very critical issues for Africans here on the continent and Africans throughout the diaspora. We are appreciative of your time. We understand the dynamics of the discussions that are going on and have gone on to this point. So we'll get right to the meat of our concerns. In the press release that was just read, I am sure one of our concerns would be, what does it mean where it says that we will provide reparations to countries and peoples concerned? We are not clear on what that phrase means.
The World Conference recognizes that slavery, the slave trade, including the transatlantic slave trade, colonialism, apartheid, and genocide, constitutes crimes against humanity and are major historical sources and manifestations of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance, and that Africans and peoples of African descent and peoples of Asian descent and indigenous peoples have been and continue to be victims of these acts and their consequences. So the people concerned are defined in this first paragraph, which is the first paragraph of the African Code of Position. So when you read paragraph 4, when we refer to providing reparations to countries and people concerned, you should read it in connection with paragraph 1. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The issues that were of concern to a lot of my brothers and sisters in the United States, such as the issue of the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, apartheid and genocide, we in the Africa group have now considered them as crimes against humanity.
Well, we're just waiting. There's negotiations going on the document, on the language. The African group are trying to negotiate to see if they can agree to what they think should be the language. And we just don't know, for sure what the issues are at this point.
The Latin American caucus has now agreed to take out of their document that the transatlantic slave trade was a crime against humanity and reparations. And so the Caribbean caucus has said that they were not consulted, that's not their position, so they have to withdraw from that caucus. I think it reinforced the position that the Africa group has taken, and that very strongly. They endorsed the issue that the transatlantic slave trade, genocide, apartheid, and colonialism were crimes against humanity and should in fact be in the final document.
Many people are new to this movement. Many people have not heard about it, or they've heard about it and they've been discouraged from participating in it because they didn't feel that we could win. But they're seeing now that this is coming before the world. And so we ask them for their support, for their involvement, for their leadership, for the sharing of their resources so that we can all be victorious in this fight.
When I was talking to a lot of the ministers as well as the delegations from the African countries, it seemed that they had a new resilience to stand for our humanity as African people. And that made me very, 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 very proud.
Around the question of reparations, some of us have been organizing for 10, 12 years around reparations, and to see it now at this level and to be able to go back and let people understand it's an international issue now. We have allies everywhere. Ought to fuel us and motivate. I know it's motivated me and educated me to go back and do more work on the ground for another decade if the Creator gives me that much life to make sure that we take it to another level in the next 10 years.
I have participated here lobbying. I have interviewed people from about 10 different Latin countries where most of us don't know that there is 150 million blacks in Latin America. And especially Colombia. In Colombia alone there are 15 millions. And I have participated in their meetings. We are meeting daily. I have been in contact with New York daily, and there has been almost no media coverage of this conference and the results.
We have to get on the other side, which is back to the U.S. and to our respective local communities, and try to break this down to our communities and to get ourselves organized and to continue to function, and to also put pressure where pressure is due and not lose sight of the focus.
Day 6 of the World Conference Against Racism is moving as slowly as we had anticipated. I think we've had some major successes. One is that our intention was to expose to the world that the United States disregards the opinion of other countries in the world, and they also refuse to accept responsibility for their part in the transatlantic slave trade. Our victory is that we have firmly placed that on the agenda. Our second victory is that we have forced the perpetrators of that crime to cowardly walk out of the conference. I think the other accomplishment is the networking and unity of African people throughout the world from every continent who have clearly stated that the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, colonialism, indeed, are crimes against humanity. Day 7 will be a continuation of negotiations on what's called critical issues, like the transatlantic slave trade, like the issue of reparations, like the issue in the Middle East. When those issues come up, they're critical issues, and every parliamentary trick in the book is pulled by the West. We expect that to continue. Day 8, we might see a final draft. At the end of the conference, we might see a final draft. Our expectations is, though, that they cannot not come out of the conference with a draft declaration. The content is going to be something we've got to pay particular attention to and be extremely vigilant on, but expect the worst, but never give up the fight for the best. We hope that after Durban, that post-Durban will be the declaration, so that throughout the world we are going to attempt to organize millions for reparations and millions to conclude that the transatlantic slave trade is a crime against humanity, that colonialism is a crime against humanity, that apartheid a crime against humanity, that the Belgium's brutalization of the Congo, the brutal killing of Patrice Lumumba, is in fact one of the horrors of colonialism that has never been addressed, but that we will continue to push to have it addressed.